Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how you can qualify for state in number sense. So whether this is your first year, you've never heard of number sense before, or you are a senior just trying to get to that point. Maybe you're in a really competitive region. You're trying to get to that point where you can qualify for state in number sense. This video is for you. So we got to start off in a pretty logical place, but a place that a lot of people won't start. So first, we have to think of what qualities does a state competitor or a state qualifier have. So, one, I would say a state number sense qualifier would have a pretty high speed in mental arithmetic. They would know a lot of number sense tricks, right? I mean, it is the number sense contest, right? It would make sense that you would have to know the tricks. Number three, not only would you have to know them, but you have to have a pretty high speed with them in order to answer enough problems. And then number four is one that isn't talked about very much, but is actually a problem that a lot of people have that holds them back, and that's focus. So over the course of this video, we're going to delve into these a little bit, into a little bit more detail. Some of them I'm going to give you a lot more background, but just stick around for the video and see what you learn. So first of all, we got to learn, how do we build raw speed? So some people are just better at this naturally than others, but the only reason this is because they just naturally understand basic tricks that a lot of other people would have to learn instead. So for instance, it's probably obvious for some people that if I'm doing like 39 plus 9, right? Someone that doesn't have a lot of mental math skill or experience might say, okay, 39 plus 9. I'm going to take 9 plus 9, write the 8, carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4, so it's 48. Someone that can intuit basic tricks, or someone that's had more practice, might say, well, if I have 38 plus 9, that's the same thing as doing 38 plus 10 and subtracting 1, right? 38 plus 10, or wait, I changed the number. 39 plus 10 is 49, and then minus 1 is 48, right? So some people will just be able to intuit these tricks. Another common one is dividing by 5. So a lot of people, when you divide by 5, what you could do is divide by 10 and then multiply by 2. Dividing by 10 is pretty easy because you just move the decimal place. But a way you can start doing this is by just practicing mental math every time you get a chance. At home, at school, anytime you get a chance. So a pretty common example of this that I would do is I would look at, anytime I was like walking past the microwave, I would look and I would try to see how fast can I calculate, like how long is it until the next hour. So if I'm looking at my clock and it's 12:23, it's not a very difficult problem, but just being able to see a problem and instantly figure it out is a very, very good skill that you're going to need even before you start getting super good at the raw tricks, or at the number sense tricks. If you have this skill, then learning the number sense tricks becomes much, much easier. So start doing it any chance you have. There's lots of different ways you can do this. That's just one example. Another thing you can do is anytime you go to check the weather, see if you can convert the weather into Celsius. That's another common one. There's lots of others. And then at school, what I would recommend is start trying to solve your math work in your head first, and then if your teacher still makes you show your work, right? Like still go down the page and show your work, right? You don't want to get bad grades. But just start trying to get an idea of what. Start trying to incorporate this mental math more into your daily routine. And that way, whenever you're under pressure, it won't feel like you're under pressure, right? It'll just be what you've normally done. Another thing I'll say is that sometimes these problems are going to be way too hard. Like you're just not going to be able to do them. If I'm thinking of an example, let's say that let's say you're at the grocery store, right? And you're trying to calculate in your head, like, how much is all this stuff that I'm buying? How much is it going to cost? Well, maybe you can add up all the prices in your head, all the if you're like going on a pretty long trip, that could get pretty mentally taxing. But then at the end, whenever you have to multiply by like an 8.25% sales tax, right? That's significantly more challenging, right? Because that's like multiplying a 4-digit number by like a 5-digit number. That's really challenging. So what you can do instead is try to get more comfortable with estimating. Yeah, try to get more comfortable with estimating. So instead of multiplying by 1.0825, maybe just start with trying to get 8%. And maybe if your total comes out like 47.32, maybe just try to do what would be 8% tax on $47. Just try to get close. And the best part of that is like there's estimation problems on number sense as well. So it's not like a cop out. Like you're still practicing. So, and then the next thing is if you do UAL math, this will help your speed in that and number sense. And it might also help you find quicker methods to solve problems. So if you're doing UAL math, try to find ways to do these problems in your head. And and the point is that a lot of times it's easier and faster than just straight typing it in your calculator. People on UAL math waste a lot of time on their calculator, but it helps you twofold, right? It helps you on UAL math. Sometimes you find quicker ways, and it helps you on number sense just because you're practicing this mental agility. Oh yeah, and this is what I was talking about before. Even if the problems are really complex, at least estimate the answer. And you can do this on math as well. You probably wouldn't do it during an actual test, but if you're just practicing, estimating is a really valuable skill. Okay, so on to the next thing, how to learn new tricks. Now, these past tips have been pretty general, but this is going to be a little bit more specific. It's a system that I find works pretty well. But if you already have a system in place and you're looking at this and you think that your system is better, I highly encourage you to try this. And if you really don't get the results that you're looking for, then you can go back to your old method. But I highly recommend that you try this. So, first of all, you're going to want to do this in a group of people of similar skill level. You can do this by yourself, but it makes it a lot slower. You're learning tricks. So the first step is to print a number sense test, and depending on your skill level or whatever you want to work on, right? Choose a group of 20 to focus on. So if you're the kind of person that's already finishing number sense tests, but you might not always want to just practice number 71 through 80. Maybe you have trouble with accuracy on like 31 through 40. Like you can still work on that. Or sorry, like 21 through 40. I guess I did say group of 20. Yeah. And after you've printed it out, just work the first 10 problems. You can do that either mentally if you know a trick or have some idea of how to do it, or you can. I realize I have a typo here. This is supposed to say on paper. Yeah, work the first 10 problems either mentally or on paper. And then after that, circle the problems that you had difficulty with, and ask the other people in your group how you did the difficult problems. And when you're doing this, you should start to be like exchanging knowledge, figuring out new tricks, and whenever you figure out a new trick, make note cards for the new tricks that you find. And if you have no friends or you don't have a coach, right, it does happen, I'm sorry. But you can go to the Discord link in the description, and there are people there that will help you with new tricks. There's a YouTube channel that a lot of you might have heard of called Texas Math Mundo. It's run by Saul Cantu, one of the coach at Pasadena High School near Houston. And he's created quite the community. And it's a very helpful Discord. If you post a question, you usually have an answer at the latest, like by the next day. It's usually quicker than that. Okay, now after you've done this, do the same 10 problems on the other copy, and this time do them all in your head and timed. Check your answers, and for those ones that you missed, find exactly where the mistake was and what thought process caused you to miss it. One of the biggest problems that you see in number sense practice is the idea of the silly mistake. It's the idea of the silly mistake. Because whenever you make a silly mistake, sometimes it really is silly, right? Sometimes you look at a problem, you say 5 plus 6 is 10, right? That's a really silly mistake. There's no there's no fault in learning from that mistake. You really just had like a slip of the mind. But a lot of times people will say that something is a silly mistake whenever there's actually a problem with the way they understand the trick. And by going back, working through it, you can do this on paper. By going back and working through and figuring out what's the exact moment or the exact step where my mistake occurred, it seriously increases your yield for figuring out, for improving on that specific trick. Now, once you've done this, mark all the problems that were slow or missed, or I guess you would do that before, and then trade tests with a friend. And then for each problem missed, make 5 practice problems. So if you're working number 1 through 10, right, and on number 7, say it's a problem where you have to practice multiplying by 11, right, and you miss it, then when you trade, your friend would make 5 problems that 5 problems where you have to take a number and multiply by 11. You can switch it up. Maybe the problem was a 3-digit times 11. You can make it a 4-digit times 11, or you can just be creative. But the point is to have the idea be that specific problem. And maybe you didn't just miss number 7, but like say you missed number 3, and that was like a multiplying by 25 trick. Do it for that too, and then keep trading and grading until you don't make any more mistakes. You want to make sure that you can get 5 in a row without any mistakes before you really are comfortable moving on. This can be kind of tedious. Right? Because you feel like, well, maybe if I make an easy mistake, like you do 4 of them, make an easy mistake on the 5th. You make an easy mistake on the 5th, you'll be like, oh, that was a dumb mistake, right? That was a dumb mistake. I'm good to move on. But the thing is that you want to be able to build that consistency, because whenever you're at regional competition and you're competing against some of the top people in your part of the state, you don't want to run the risk that on that test you're going to mess up the 25s trick, right? You want to make sure that you can get 5 right in a row in a non-pressure situation, so that whenever you are in a pressure situation, then it makes it a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. And then, of course, you're going to repeat this for the next 10 problems, and just keep going in your practice. Something I didn't really touch on too much, but it's the idea of this grouping in 20s. There's actually a chart out there. I don't know how updated it is, or I don't think he's updated in a while, but the idea of it is that there's certain tricks that appear in certain parts of the test. So by practicing these groups of 20, you're not having to worry about, like if you can only get to number 19, right? You don't need to be learning the integral calculus that comes up on the 4th column, right? It's relatively predictable. The things that are asked are relatively predictable within a certain column. And so that's why I suggest doing it in groups like that. And then 10 in a row is just a nice, like, you get 9 problems and an estimation, and it makes the practice problem creating not feel like it takes so incredibly long. Okay, and then also remember to hold on to these tests so you can use them in the future, right? If you're just starting and you're doing 1 through 20, a lot of people don't have access to a lot of tests, so that whenever you get to the point where, oh, I want to start working like 21 through 40, you still have access to these tests, right? You still have access to these tests, and you don't have to like go ask your coach to print another one out or use a new test altogether. Okay, here we go. How do I get faster? So now that you've learned all these tricks, how do I actually get faster using them? So actually, learning and practicing these new tricks will naturally make you faster, right? This process of creating practice problems will just naturally be faster. It's just inevitable. It'll happen. You can make this a little bit more efficient by specifically practicing tricks that you struggle with. So if every test you miss, a pretty common one that people struggle with is the converting repeating decimals into fractions. Converting repeating decimals into fractions and the other way around. So it might be a little bit uncomfortable. You might not like practicing them, but if you can just put your head down and practice those ones specifically, then you're going to improve a lot quicker. Practice is not going to be as much fun because you're not getting like the hits of, oh, I can solve this problem and this problem and this problem, and then I skip this one because it, makes me feel bad because I always miss it. But if you just practice those ones, it'll really make your practice a lot more efficient. The other one is to make tricks second nature. And what I mean by that is there should be very little time delay between whenever you see a problem and whenever you know what trick and how to use that trick. So even if your actual mental calculation of the answer isn't very fast, a ton of your speed, a ton of time is lost in just figuring out what trick to use. And again, this comes from practicing new tricks, not practicing new tricks, just practicing the ones that you know, recognizing patterns, and yes, and a great way of doing this is by creating your own practice questions. Because whenever you create your own practice questions, you're generating, you're taking this pattern and you're generating new ways of expressing it, right? And that's what you're going to see on a test, right? The chance that the test writer will use the exact same problem that he has before is not very likely. And so this works twofold. Well, one, it helps you recognize the trick faster. And two, every once in a while, this doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while you come across a problem that you've solved verbatim before. And whenever you see that, right, all of a sudden that question becomes a 2-second problem or a 1 second. You can make this even better if you are if you can combine multiple tricks into one problem. This tests your ability to recognize patterns and put patterns together, and this makes your recognition of the tricks even faster. Okay, here's something about practice tests. We've kind of finished the ideas of how to get faster, but here's a note on practice tests. Unless you're already scoring in the high 200s or 300s, you do not have to be taking that many tests. If you're scoring in the 300s and you're trying to build to the 330s, 340s, 350s range, right? You are one of the top people in the state. You are on the road to a top 6 finish or a state championship. You don't need to be taking that many tests per week. Something closer to 3 to 4 tests a week is actually more than enough. And if you're still learning new tricks, going 1 to 2 weeks without taking a test is not a huge deal. You're much better at practicing in batches of 10, making practice questions, getting faster, getting better at recognizing patterns. That is a much better use of your time, because at this stage, what does a test really tell you, right? The test is really just a diagnostic of where you are, right? And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather spend, if I have a limited amount of time, which I'm sure you do, AP tests, clubs, all that stuff, if I have 30 minutes to practice, I'd rather spend 30 minutes practicing than taking 10 minutes to grade a test, maybe 2 minutes to grade, and then practicing the stuff that I missed, right? So you don't need to be taking that many tests. I will talk a little bit later about what you should do while taking tests to make that practice more effective. But yeah, you don't need. I see a lot of people that they're scoring in the 100s, taking 10 tests a day, and they're not improving. And it's well, yeah, obviously you're not improving. You're just testing what you already know. You're just testing what you already know. You're not actually learning anything new. So, on to the next thing, focus. This is what you're actually going to use tests for. So I always say that your mind is the loudest distraction. In any testing room, it's not the pencil dropping or the guy flipping the test at 3 minutes and intimidating everybody. It's actually your own thoughts that are the loudest distraction. Not being able to focus continuously for 10 minutes will kill your scores, because this is why you make a lot of simple errors. Random thoughts pop into your brain, especially in stressful situations. If you're thinking about the problem and stressing about the test, you're only accessing around half of your mental resources, right? And that might even be optimistic. This causes people to go into autopilot and make easy errors. And it's whenever you go into autopilot that you make those mistakes 5 + 6 = 10. Right? Because you're not actively engaging with the problem. You're not actively thinking about it. So you just go into well, I've seen that problem kind of like this before. And then maybe the problem's a little bit different than what you've seen. And that's whenever you'll make an error. So it's different kinds of things like that. The other thing is, you ever notice how whenever you are taking a test and you miss 9 problems, it's not uncommon for 3 or 4 of them to be really bunched together? Yeah, that's when you've lost focus. that's when you lost focus. Because I bet that at least 2 or 3 of those 4 were pretty easy errors. Well, okay. I mean, I know it's a problem, but how do I fix it? Well, when you're taking a practice test, you need to be extremely intentional about how much you are focusing, right? You need to actively be actively aware of when like an extraneous thought pops into your brain. So this will be really difficult at first. In fact, like when I started doing this, I would literally, like my forehead would literally sweat whenever I tried to do this. It takes a lot of mental resources, and it's way more difficult than whenever you're normally practicing. Something I did that made it a little bit easier is that if you open your eyes really wide while taking a test, it does help you focus better. I mean, I don't know if this is an actual like scientifically proven thing, but it really helped me. You can try that out. Experiment with what works for you. You can do your own research. There's a lot of research done on focus. Another thing is if you're at a contest, getting a full night's sleep before a contest is very, very, very important. Getting into a good headspace before a contest. And what I mean by that is you don't want it to be the state meet and there's 3 minutes left before it starts and you're just now like scarfing down your breakfast, like because the test is at 8 o'clock. You don't want to like just now be scarfing down your breakfast. You run in and you're all frantic and you're all crazy, and then now you're put in this stressful situation. Like it's just not good. It doesn't help you focus. You're really stressed, you're really frantic, and it's gonna be really hard. If you're really dedicated, there's a lot of studies that show that cutting out short form content like YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels has been proven to improve your attention span. So if you're really dedicated, if you are like, if you feel that you could be really great, if I could just make like five fewer errors per test, I could be like at the top. I mean, I could be making 300s, or I could maybe you only get to number 20, but you make 3 dumb mistakes in a test, in addition to the ones you don't know, and now your score of 100 is now docked to like a 27, right? So if you really feel that it could improve your score, and this other stuff hasn't worked, I would highly suggest trying this out at least for a period, to see how it works. Okay, now we're going to talk about goal setting. So I assume that a lot of you watching this video that your primary goal is just to qualify for state. Here on the right, I have the average score required for state qualifications. This isn't a perfect graphic because, as a lot of you know, certain regions are more competitive than others. And I should have been a little bit more specific. This is actually the average third place score at regionals. So like in 1A, I averaged the 4 third place individuals for number sense. So you can see there's a pretty steep cutoff from 4A to 5A. Like here we're all in the hundreds, and then boom, like high 200s. It gets pretty competitive whenever you get into the larger schools. Everyone's goals are going to be slightly different, and the key is to decide on a goal and stick with it, right? You got to have consistency. So if you're in 1A through 4A, it is a very realistic goal if you're a freshman to qualify for state. In fact, I'm pretty sure that last year, the state champion, not just a state qualifier, but the state champion was from Dallas Science Engineering Magnet. He was a freshman. Shout out Stephen Livingston if you're watching this video. And then in 5A, 6A, freshmen qualify for state all the time. It's just much more rare. So in 5A, 6A, these are mostly schools that have had pretty strong junior high programs. A lot of these schools have junior high programs where they've learned number sense before. And so that's why these scores tend to be a lot higher. And plus, they just have like more people to pull from, right? If you have a school of 2,000 people, the likelihood that you have 4 people that are pretty good at math is it's a pretty high shot. Versus like if you're a 1A school with a graduating class of like 18, right? So, a little bit of parting wisdom is, so you've been given a lot of information, and if you're a student, I highly recommend that you send this video to your teammates and your coach if you have one, so you're all on the same page. Let's see. And maybe a little bit of motivation. Maybe you're really pumped up right now, but here's a little bit of motivation. So now that this video is out, a lot of people are going to see it, at least I hope. A lot of people are going to be feeling that excitement right now, that feeling that you can qualify for state this year, this will be the year, and I'm going to be a state champion, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, and this is kind of harsh, but I'm going to tell you right now that most of you will fail, right? Most of you won't hold yourself accountable to a practice schedule. Most of you will shrug off the idea of working on being extra focused. Most of you won't make practice questions when you miss a problem and just call it a dumb mistake instead of finding the root of the problem. Right? But what does this mean? It means if you do all the things I've mentioned in this video, and you at least experiment it and try and have good consistency, you're already ahead of the vast majority of the people you're up against. So please work on these things, and if you don't notice an improvement, you can leave a comment or shoot me an email at investigative.math@gmail.com. I'll leave the link to that in the description as well. Or even better, you can join the Texas Math Mundo Discord and DM me on there. I hope this serves as a good roadmap for you moving forward, and as always, leave a comment if you have any questions about anything mentioned here. Good luck, and I will see you at the state meet.